Hello! Oh my god, temp chains map, right? Most builds hate temp chains. However, it doesn't really affect a Reave build because where your main movement is whirling blades. Now, a lot of builds really want to get high movement speed, whereas with whirling blades, you can also go for boots that have zero movement speed on them. This is a big bonus because a lot of people are just going to look at boots, say, oh, they don't have movement speed, can't get movement speed, just can sell them cheap. So you can get really good boots. And you can see here, I'm using increased area of effect, so even without having 8 stacks on your Reave, you're doing pretty big AoE, and it's not really interrupting your clear speed at all. This is with pretty high end gear. Weapon-wise, I'm only using a Benos, which is going to be around 1 to 2x. It might go up in price a little bit in the new league, where that's just theory, but you can see now that it's Val Reaved with increased area of effect. It's just a wave of death. And even though this is a temp chain map, you can see that it's clearing really, really fast. Now, this is a 6-linked Val Reave, 6-linked Reave, using Val Reave to support. The Val Reave does not need to be linked to anything. And in my main hand, I have a Soul Taker. Now, the reason for the Soul Taker is so you can run a third aura. So I'm running Herald of Ice for the power charge generation. I'm going to go through the links later on. And I'm running a Herald of Ash just for more damage, and then a Hatred to also help shatter. As well as the Taste of Hate helps shatter as well. You can see now that what most people usually hate, which is a temp chain map, and a lot of people want to do temp chains map because it's so good pack size, which is obviously what you want when you're building. And it's just working really well. And you can see that I'm keeping my Val Reave up for pretty much the entire map. Now, this is going to be really, really strong in the next patch, and that's because right now it's only putting on 1 poison stack on the enemies. But in the next patch, it's going to stack. So you're going to have multiple ways of applying the poison. The current way of having it through Outer's Touch is going to be nerfed slightly, but I think, for example, we see a lot more usage of items such as Snake Bite. I'm going to go through a lot of itemization now. Let's take a little look at itemization. Weapons-wise, for your endgame weapon, you're going to want a Beano's Kitchen Knife, at least until you can get a really, really high endgame dagger, but that could cost you anywhere from like 10 to 30 XL. So Beano's will most likely end up being your weapon of choice. At the current cost, it's been around 1 to 3 XL. It might increase in price with the new Talisman League. I was staring up to 82 maps with this, and it was extremely good. It has a lot of properties that are useful for the build. It has good crit, bow multiplier, and it's got the poison hit mechanic. Or at least the poison regen mechanic, which is very strong and it applies to your entire group. And at some points I can get up to 5 to 7k health per second for my entire group. So unless people get one shot, they're not really gonna die. It's also very good for keeping your ice golem up, which gives you more crit. Now, usually you have your, what you're using as your damage weapon, you have that in your offhand. For example, I was using a Soul Taker in my main hand, and the reason for that is so I can leap slam. And you use leap slam because you can't whirling blades over objects. Sometimes you'll get stuck, so it's very handy to have an actual escape mechanism. And as I just mentioned as well, Soul Taker is extremely good for this build. I did experiment with other weapons as well, but now let's go through Soul Taker first. Now, Soul Taker lets you run an additional aura. It also makes that your physical damage can chill, which is also very, very nice, and it gives you resistance, which is always good on any weapon. It also gives you some freedom with your whirling blades. I found that not like using blood magic on your whirling blades was very nice. I never went low because of that or anything like that, so it was very comfortable having it. I actually prefer Soul Taker as the main hand weapon. Now, endgame you might end up using Beano's as an offhand and then a really high damage rare dagger as your main hand. Now, let's look at Death's Hand, which is what I used for a very long time before switching to Soul Taker. Now, the good thing with Death's Hand is you don't need a Herald of Ice setup to proc your power charges. I was using Herald of Ice with Curse on Hit and Assassin's Mark. And that keeps my charges up quite a lot. But until I had a Soul Taker and Herald of Ice setup, I used my Death's Hand for that. So I was running Herald of Ash, Hatred, and the Death's Hand. And Death's Hand makes power charges for you. You do stun quite a lot. So you'd probably be running a cast and damage taken. Cast and damage taken Warlord's Mark setup with this, so you can stun easier. And then you're going to keep your power charges up for most of the map. And you do also get Unholy Might, which is a buff that increases your chaos damage, which is also very, very good for Reave. It's based off your physical damage, so it's basically like an additional hatred effect. So that's very good. Now there are a lot of cheaper offense you can use as well. There is the Living is Wisdom. It increases your area radius and it increases your area damage, which is a very cheap offhand, very useful early on when you can't afford anything better. And you have the Relentless Fury, which is also very good. It gives you culling, and you have Onslaught when you have culled something. Onslaught increases your attack speed and all that good stuff, so very useful as well. Now, currently the poison mechanic doesn't stack as I previously mentioned, but it will stack now, so you're gonna have 3 ways of stacking it. There's the Adder's Touch, like before, or it's been nerfed. There's a chance that will apply poison, there's a chance the new node will apply poison, and there is a chance you will be using Snakebite. Snakebite is what I'm most likely going to be using in Talisman, and that's because then you have a 3rd way of getting poison. And Snakebite does, when at maximum charges, you poison your enemies, which is very good. So now you have 3 ways of applying stacks, which in an ideal world you'll go 3, 6, 9 poison stacks, right? That's going to be a lot of damage against bosses, rare, stuff like that. Other items that are good for leveling is Might Flay. So if you find one next to your Mirror Calandra, I'm joking of course, but Might Flay is really rare. It kind of feels like a T2 unique. When I was trying to buy some for leveling, there was 2 on the auction house. There was like 20 Beanos or 10 Beanos, something like that, whereas there was only 2 Might Flays. So I don't know if people just aren't picking them up, aren't selling them, but it seems to be really hard to get. Or it's not very expensive when it actually is for sale. Another very, very good leveling unique is the Lakeisha's Blade. Princess as well is quite good, but what Lakeisha's Blade does is it has the Socket Gems are supported by level 1 multi-strike. So before you can actually use multi-strike, you can get it off this blade. So while you're leveling, you should try to get one of these, try to get it cheap. Other than that, I would just recommend rare swords and like using a decent offhand. Now, while you're using offhand that isn't a dagger, claw, or sword, you're not going to be able to reave with it, so it'll only be using its effects, like for example on the Lavinia's Wisdom, it'll only be using like the radius and area damage. It won't be using its actual attack damage. It doesn't matter if it's, say, for example, a level 1 mace. It doesn't matter. It's not going to affect your damage at all. It'll only be using its properties. Now, your links are ideally going to be in a 6-link lightning coil. That is your endgame armor of choice. Obviously, that is not easy to get, but that is the endgame here. So in a 6-link, you'd be using Reave, faster attacks, multi-strike, fortify, melee physical, and increased area of effect. If you are forced to use a 5-link, you can either drop the increased area of effect or fortify. It depends. It's always up to you, you know. Either you feel comfortable with dropping some clear speed, or you're doing low maps and you feel comfortable with dropping your fortifying. For leveling, I'd keep the fortify in as soon as you get it. So when you're using a 4-link, I would drop faster attacks, probably. Until you get a lightning coil, you're most likely going to be using any 5-link test, evasion preferably. And the reason for this is you're not going to be able to use a Cloak of Flames, which I usually recommend for a lot of builds, because getting the colors you want is going to be an absolute nightmare. Now, I have designed 2 builds around this so far. I've designed a Scion and I've designed a Ranger. Ranger is slightly better, I'd say, but the Scion is also gives you a lot more diversity about respecking endgame. So whenever I'm designing a build, I also try to design a similar build for the Scion tree. And I see if I lose more than 10% effectiveness, I would generally go with the pure form. Say I was losing 30% effectiveness by going Scion, I'd be going Ranger. But because I'm losing very little effectiveness, the Scion build is quite strong for this. I'll probably end up going Scion myself, just so I have the option of respecking late game. Say I end up hating Reave, or something's changed, stuff like that. Then at least I have the option, you know. Shadow as well would be quite strong for Reave at this point, so I'll try to make a build for that as well before the guide is complete. That will be in the forum post for the guide, however, which is where I'll also have like the leveling tree, stuff like that, and all the info with all the links, like all the other links, like what you would have in your whirling blades or custom damage setup, everything like that is going to be on the forum post. It's just like a brief overview of everything. Endgame boots, for example, would be the dark ray vectors most likely. It's going to be very hard to hit this many uniques with getting high enough resist. You're probably going to have to rely on jewels a little bit for resist. Because you want at least a rat's nest. If you're on softcore, you can use an abyssus, which is going to be ridiculous damage. But if you're on hardcore, you don't really want to risk having an abyssus on. At least I don't. I'm going to be trying out a snake bite, and I'm also going to be trying out dark ray vectors. So that's like 3 uniques you want to use there. So you need to get a lot of resist off your rings, amulet, and your belt. Ideally, you want a damage necklace as well. So it's a quite hard build to do with all the uniques. Obviously, all the uniques can be replaced with a rare, and all the uniques just give you more damage and versatility. So that's pretty much it. I'll be going through a lot more in the build guide for the forums, and all the details are going to be there. If you have any questions, you can just drop by my stream and ask. I will be playing this build in the next league, so hopefully it'll work exactly like I hope it will. I actually think this is going to be one of the most broken and really, really powerful skills that will be usable in Talisman. As you saw, I was clearing maps absolutely beast in the 5 week, and I think it's only become stronger now. So I think it's going to be extremely good. So on that, I'm going to end it. Feel free to drop by my stream at PC Child. And thank you for watching, and good luck in Talisman, guys. I hope you all get a lot of good loot. Thank you for watching.